Thanksgiving night, 1976. Something amazing happened in the rock and roll live music world, and we're going to talk about that right now. It was Thanksgiving night, 1976, and that's what we're talking about here on Love Live Music. My name's Chris King. Welcome back to my video channel. If you would, take a minute to press the subscribe button, click the bell, you'll get notifications if you want them. If you don't, just when you log on to YouTube, you'll see me at the top of your chart and you can check out my videos. What we're talking about today might surprise you. It surprises me, it definitely surprises all my friends, and that is this. Chris King, who has been in the live music business my entire life, I've never, ever seen The Last Waltz by Martin Scorsese, the film chronicle of the very last concert by the band. And this happened on Thanksgiving night, 1976 at Winterland in San Francisco. You might ask yourself, how did I not get there? How did I never see The Last Waltz by the band? Well, I'll tell you, I was a kid in 1976, like a little kid. And so I was an older kid through the 80s. And what I wasn't listening to was the band or really anything that sounded like that. In the 80s, I was listening to 80s stuff. I was listening to Duran Duran and Michael Jackson and Prince. And then I got into all the hair metal bands, Rat and Cinderella, and even Bon Jovi and things like that. So I wasn't really familiar with a lot of the music from the performers of the band until I got to college, because I went to school in Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is very important because Levon Helm and the guys in the band, that was kind of one of their home base areas in the early 60s. So, all that being said, there is some history from my later years, my college years and on up, that I really began to understand the importance of the band, of Levon and Rick Danko and Garth Hudson and Richard Manuel and, you know, the other guy, Robbie Robertson. See, where I come from, there are two camps. There's the Levon was the band leader camp, and there was the Robbie Robertson is the band leader camp. I'm squarely on the Levon side, as he is the pride of Marvell, Arkansas, not too far from where I am right now. But all of that being said, let's talk about Thanksgiving night, 1976. The people were invited for an evening of turkey dinner and ballroom dancing. That's how it all began. Actually, attendees of the concert were fed a traditional turkey dinner. They also had a vegetarian table. And then they had traditional ballroom dancing, waltzing, the Last Waltz. And this is what Martin Scorsese put on film, which is known as one of the great concert films of all time. And I watched it for the first time like just now, today. And I'm going to tell you what I thought about it. So the film starts out with Don't Do It, which, if you're watching, a lot of this isn't done sequentially, and you can tell by watching it that this is actually the final song of the evening, and that's what tracks first in the film, is Don't Do It, which I believe is one of the highest charting songs that the band had, maybe charting higher than everything except for Up on Cripple Creek, which they go into soon thereafter. So we go Don't Do It, and then there's a little vignette, and throughout we've got interviews with members of the band, telling stories, telling different things. We learn a lot of information about how they got started. Maybe I'd like to hear a little bit more about the stories with Ronnie Hawkins, the Hawk, and we learn a little bit more about them finding the house, which is Big Pink, and just about life on the road. And the general context through all of these interviews throughout, it really comes off like Robbie Robertson just doesn't want to be on the road anymore. He doesn't want to necessarily be in the band, I don't think. And I think maybe in hindsight, that's the general consensus that everybody has, is that Robbie Robertson decided the time was over. The other guys certainly ended up making more music together 10 years later after this concert film. But through the interviews, Robbie Robertson acts like, hey, 16 years on the road, man, that's enough. 16 years is enough. And he says it multiple times. And, you know, you say it multiple times, I'm going to start to believe you. Then we go back to the live set, Winterland. We've got a beautiful full ballroom where the guys are playing. And, you know, it's not just the fact that Levon is from the same state I'm from and that he's got a lot of history and still, I know he's passed now 8 years ago, but we still have a lot of mutual friends that are in the business in this area. But every time they show Levon playing and singing, which, let's be honest, it's most, if not all, of their biggest and most brilliantly awesome songs. Every time you see Levon and the way he holds the drumsticks and the way he hits it, I mean, he's got so much soul. He's got so much heart and soul when he plays. You got to come away from this thing thinking Levon is the man, was the man, is the man. Levon Helm, what a national treasure. So we get up on Cripple Creek and we get a couple of more stories. Maybe we see Rick Danko, and this was great because Richard Manuel was telling a story about, you know, these guys are all from Canada. When they would come down south, they had their big overcoats, and basically starts to go into a story. And you know that he's going to start telling about shoplifting in some stores. And Rick Danko's real quick to be like, hey, remember, I wasn't there that day. And they're like, maybe you were. So I feel like Rick was just trying to cover himself. Hey, Mom and Dad, if you see this, I wasn't one of the ones shoplifting. But it just really, there's a lot of character in all of these guys. Later on, we hear the story of Garth Hudson charging everybody in the band $10 a week for music lessons so that he can go back to his parents and say, I'm not necessarily in a rock and roll band, I'm teaching these guys, and that there was more honor in that. So a lot of great stories throughout that kind of break up the concert film. So it's not just straight performances. It's like you get a song or two, and then you get some more background information. And not enough Levon. Maybe a little heavy on the Robbie Robertson. Of course, when the credits roll, you learn why, because he produced the thing. So he's still getting paid for this. Whereas the other guys don't see any production credits for any of the other band members. The first guest they bring on, and if you're not familiar with this, there's a slew of famous rock and roll legends that play on this thing. And the first guest they bring out is Ronnie Hawkins, who got the guys started back when they were Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks. It was a top billed rockabilly band that used to play all over this country and over in Europe. And that's really, Ronnie Hawkins is the one that got all the guys together to form the band. They were his backing band. I met Ronnie Hawkins one time in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I was producing a show with Jerry Lee Lewis there, and it was a big deal that Ronnie Hawkins came to the show and was backstage, and to sit in a room with Jerry Lee Lewis and Ronnie Hawkins and Dr. Nick, who was Elvis's doctor, the famous Dr. Nick. And for me to be one of 4 or 5 people in that room with those 3 guys is something that I will never, ever forget. So Ronnie Hawkins comes out, does Who Do You Love? It looks like he and Rick Danko have patched up because years before, when the band left Ronnie Hawkins, it's supposedly because they got into a fight with one another. So it's good to see that they've patched things up, or at least to me, it's good to know that they patched things up 40 years ago when this thing took place, right? And then the guest stars keep coming. You have Neil Young comes out and is very gracious as he approaches Robbie Robertson and says, you know, thank you so much for having me on this. And Robbie's kind of like, wow, I mean, you're Neil Young. It's amazing that you're thanking me. And then Neil Young goes into Helpless. He's got backup vocals by one of my all-time favorites, Joni Mitchell. It really struck me as I was watching, I was thinking, it really struck me how much like Neil Young kind of looks and reminds me of Jay Farrar of Sun Volt, Uncle Tupelo, and how much Rick Danko reminds me of Graham Parsons in a lot of ways. Maybe in some of his vocalizations is what I mean there. But moving on, we've got Neil Young does Helpless. And one thing I noticed throughout, and I'm sure if you've seen it, you feel the same way. This film looks and sounds amazing. Even so many years after the fact, it just sounds so good. It's so full of life. It's analog music, right? It's real music made by real musicians, and it just sounds amazing. Well, we get to a point where, for some reason, I'm not sure why Scorsese did this. Maybe you'll have to ask him, but they intercut a portion of it on a soundstage, which isn't the Winterland performance. They do this 2 different times. Once they do it with the Staples Singers and covering the weight. So it's kind of the band and the Staples Singers doing the weight. I think the Staples Singers covered it after the band did it originally. So they've got, there's Mavis, there's Pop Staples, there's the other 2 Stapleses, which I don't know them, but I understand that afterwards they started a very successful office supply chain, Staples. They did not. Don't quote me on that. I'll cut that out. Then they cut back to the real show, and Neil Diamond is there. He does a performance, not my favorite. Legend has it that after Neil Diamond performed, that he walked off stage and told Bob Dylan to follow that. And Bob Dylan said, "What do you want me to do? Go up there and fall asleep on the microphone?" And so there was a little ribbing back and forth between those guys. Then we've got Muddy Waters does Manish Boy. Joni Mitchell comes out and does one of her compositions, Coyote. Then we go back to the soundstage where they bring out Emmylou Harris, and she does a number which, again, brings me back to Rick Danko, reminds me a lot of Graham Parsons with his style, knowing that Emmylou was a great peer of Graham's. They recorded several things together. From there, we're really building up steam with the concert. They bring Eric Clapton out, and I gotta say, Robbie Robertson really holds his own with Eric Clapton as they do a big trade-off of guitar solos, and it's a very great rockin' moment. Eric Clapton, man, he makes it look effortless. That's how you know a virtuoso, a genius in their field, when they just make it look effortless. And Robbie holds his own, but it looks like Robbie's thinking about it a little bit, whereas Eric's just like, it's pretty hot to watch. I really dug it. Then we come back, a couple more great tracks, Levon doing Ophelia, and then Van Morrison comes out. I forgot, Dr. John was in earlier doing Such a Night. Boy, and that's one thing. Dr. John and Van Morrison, both of those guys, when they come out, their style, their vocalization, their vocal range and style is so, like, you know exactly who they are when they start singing. There are very few artists like that, but that's when you know you have a signature vocal sound. And Dr. John, man, you know, that's Dr. John. You know Dr. John's voice. You know Van Morrison's voice, and he just belts it out. You know, great blue-eyed soul of Van Morrison. And then we get closer to the end. We bring out Bob Dylan. He's going to do Forever Young, classic song. I'm sure the guys in the band have backed him up many times through the songs that they run through on the film. Bob's wearing a super cool hat. Looks like it's a women's hat, white. Just looks cool and funky. The fashions, of course, you're talking about, this was 1976, man. Everybody's wearing interesting things, but all in all, I just really enjoyed it. All the way down to, we get to I Will Be Released, and Richard Manuel's lead vocal track, one of the classic band numbers, and they've got everybody up on stage singing it. By this time, they brought in Ringo Starr, they brought in Ron Wood, and it was just all very fantastic. My criticisms, not enough Levon. Whenever Levon was on camera being interviewed, I just really felt like this is a down-to-earth guy, a guy that I could have a conversation with today. I hate it that he's not with us anymore. I think, like I said earlier, he is a treasure. And, you know, ultimately, it was a little too much Robbie Robertson for me. I wasn't as big a fan of a lot of the stuff he had to say. It felt more like it was, you know, an interview with him, and the other guys would kind of chime in on some parts. But all in all, how is it I've gone my whole life without watching this movie? I just really dug it. I thought it was great. And I would encourage you to do the same. It's Thanksgiving. This is kind of the anniversary of when they did it, because they did it on Thanksgiving night. And that's why I wanted to share it with you, because I know that you love live music, and you know that I love live music, and you love it so much, you probably need to check out a couple of these videos that are popping up right now. Again, please subscribe to my channel. Click the videos. Hopefully we all get to go to more shows again soon, because that's what I want to do. I want to tell you about things that I see in 2020 or 2021. I enjoy talking about 1976, but let's talk about shows of the future. And I'll see you at one of them real soon.